Hey everybody, and welcome back to Sip and Talk.
Good to be back.
Before we jump into today's topic, which is definitely going to make you think, just a quick shout out, our buddy Micky.
Oh yeah, Micky.
Go subscribe to his YouTube channel, Mickytolife. Seriously, he's always up to something fun over there. Good stuff.
Always entertaining.
Okay, metaphorical coffee poured. Ready for this?
Chuckles slightly. Absolutely ready. What do we got today?
Well, we've been digging through quite a bit of material, and this one theme, it just kept surfacing. It's this perspective, seemingly quite strong in China, of being, well, unfairly targeted.
Targeted by the rest of the world, like particularly the U.S.
Exactly. That kind of feeling like, hey, we're just trying to do our thing here. Why is everyone piling on? That's the perspective we really wanted to unpack.
Okay, interesting. So exploring why that feeling exists within China. And wasn't there also something about this leading towards a more North Korea-like situation? That sounds pretty intense. So we've got some viewpoints, trying to see it from their side, considering the information they typically get access to.
Right.
And then, tackle this whole North Korea-ization idea. What does that even mean in the Chinese context, based on some analysis we found?
Got it. Sounds like a complex one.
It is. So, buckle up. Going to be thought-provoking.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so first up, this feeling of being, picked on. One source we looked at, a transcript from a show, Kuro, it really zeroed in on the official narrative.
The official Chinese narrative.
Yeah. It mentioned how the Communist Party's history constantly emphasizes the century of humiliation. That period, Opium Wars, right up to 49.
Right, where China faced repeated foreign interventions and concessions. A really difficult period.
Exactly. And that historical story, it really shapes the collective memory. It's hammered home. So it's kind of easy to see how current international pressure might feel like just more of the same, a continuation.
That makes a lot of sense. If that's the lens you're taught to view history through, any contemporary challenge from outside could easily fit that pattern, couldn't it? It's a powerful framework.
Totally. Like, if your family always told you stories about being wronged by the neighbors, you might be suspicious of the neighbors even now, right?
Chuckles. Yeah, even if they just offer you cookies, you'd be wondering what's really in them.
Right. And this feeling, it's definitely amplified by the information situation inside China. Our research pointed out how many international media sites are just blocked. The Great Firewall.
Huge numbers, right?
Yeah. One report from 2024 mentions something like over 15,000 overseas websites were blocked. So the info people do get, often it's coming straight from state-controlled outlets.
Like the People's Daily or the Global Times.
Yeah.
The big official ones.
Exactly those. So if your news consistently frames, say, international criticism as just smearing China or describes military drills near Taiwan, like one article did, as simply justified defense,
then you're naturally not getting the perspective of how, say, Taiwan or the U.S. or other neighbors might view those same actions. It creates an echo chamber.
Precisely. It builds that us versus them feeling. And what's wild is, remember that Edelman Trust Barometer from 2024?
Yeah, the trust levels in China were incredibly high.
Super high. 83% trust in their government. Way higher than here or in the EU. Now, that could mean a few things, maybe effective messaging, maybe genuine approval of some policies.
Or maybe a lack of readily available alternative viewpoints to challenge the official line.
Could be a mix, but it certainly suggests people are more likely to buy the official narratives they hear. We even saw some social media comments, apparently from 2025, where people seemed genuinely puzzled, like, why would the U.S. want to suppress China's development?
Right. If the story you hear is always about your country striving peacefully and being unfairly attacked or held back, it's logical to feel targeted. You probably wouldn't hear much detail about, say, international concerns over intellectual property theft.
Which the U.S. estimates costs them hundreds of billions.
Or about the militarization of islands in the South China Sea, which worries many neighboring countries.
Mm-hmm.
That information might be missing or framed entirely differently.
Exactly. Those are massive points of friction internationally, but if you don't hear about them, or if they're presented as hostile lies, well, it's hard to get a balanced picture.
Very true. Okay, so that covers the feeling targeted aspect. Right. Now, shifting gears to this idea of China becoming more like North Korea, this North Koreaization, what are the sources saying that actually entails?
Okay, so we looked at the Wikipedia page for DE, which is the term North Koreaization. It describes it as a trend observers started noticing more, say, since Xi Jinping's second term began around 2017.
And what are the key features they point to?
The main things are this trend towards extreme isolationism and a really strong autocratic centralization of power, basically power becoming much more concentrated.
Okay.
And one example often cited is the setting up of those re-education camps in Xinjiang. Some people see that as almost like a regional experiment in this more controlling direction.
Right. The camps definitely signal a much tighter, more coercive form of state control. That's undeniable.
Absolutely. And the article also brought up the 2018 constitutional change, the one that removed term limits for the leader.
Allowing Xi Jinping to potentially rule indefinitely.
Exactly. And a lot of international media jumped on that, saying, look, this is making China more like North Korea, where you have that kind of lifelong leadership.
So lifetime rule is one marker. What else feeds into this North Koreaization narrative?
Well, there was the crackdown, starting around 2020, on online self-media, independent bloggers and commentators, and generally tightening internet controls by the Cyberspace Administration.
Restricting information flow even further.
Yeah. The argument is that this clamps down on freedom of speech even more, making China's online world look increasingly like North Korea's, where information is just super tightly controlled.
That fits the pattern. Limited information, restricted expression. Those are definitely hallmarks we associate with North Korea.
And we found this quote from a sociologist, Kang Sang-hong. He argued that the whole COVID pandemic and the economic slump in 2020 actually sped up this trend.
Accelerated it, wow.
Yeah, and he even warned that a fully North Koreaized China would be, way more problematic for the world than North Korea itself, just because of China's size and influence.
That's a pretty stark warning. Puts it in perspective. It's not just internal changes, but the potential global fallout.
Right. And the sources also mentioned Beijing's big military drills around Taiwan, remember after Pelosi visited?
Very provocative.
The argument was that it felt similar to North Korea's habit of unannounced missile tests, that kind of sudden, aggressive move.
Okay, so more confrontational foreign policy aspect, too.
Yeah. And then after Xi secured his third term, an editorial in the Liberty Times argued he's basically moving away from Deng Xiaoping's old reform and opening up economic model.
Towards more self-sufficiency.
Exactly. Focusing on self-reliance, adopting that more aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy, all seen as more steps down that North Koreaization road.
So it really sounds like a convergence of things. Consolidating power, cracking down on freedoms, shifting the economy inward, and a tougher foreign policy stance.
That's pretty much it. And then the death of Li Keqiang in 2023, he was often seen as representing a more reform-minded wing of the party.
Right. Associated more with the economy and perhaps a less ideological approach.
His death just fueled more concerns that, maybe the voices pushing for a more open China were losing ground within the leadership.
So this whole North Koreaization idea, it's not just about one thing. It's a complex mix touching politics, economics, society, foreign relations, a perceived overall direction.
Exactly. It's about the perceived trajectory under the current leadership.
Makes sense. It's a concerning picture painted by these analyses.
So after wading through all that, what are the main takeaways for our listeners today? What should they be thinking about?
Well, I think two main things stand out. First, this feeling within China of being unfairly targeted. It seems genuinely rooted in their historical narrative. But it's also heavily, heavily shaped by the state-controlled information they receive. It's a specific lens built on specific inputs.
Right. Context is everything there.
And second, this idea of North Koreaization, well, maybe a strong term, points to real concerns shared by many observers about increasing authoritarian control, shrinking freedoms, a potential turn inwards economically, and a more confrontational international posture under Xi Jinping.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex situation with potentially huge implications. And for everyone listening, I think it really highlights just how vital it is to seek out multiple perspectives, right?
Absolutely.
And to be really aware of how access to information or the lack of it can completely shape how people understand the world and their place in it. It raises big questions about where things might be heading.
Definitely. It shows how the same global events can look completely different depending on your historical baggage and the news you consume daily.
So we'll leave you with this to think about. Given everything we've discussed, the historical narratives, the information control, the political shifts, what do you think are the biggest forces shaping China's relationship with the rest of the globe right now? Something to chew on.
Worth considering.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.